Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Today we're focusing our analysis on Voyager Technologies, VOYG, and really tackling that critical question. Based on the source material we've gathered, is VOYG a good time to buy now? We've got quite a stack of materials here covering their recent strategic moves, those future growth forecasts, and maybe most critically, the real tension between their financial health and these valuation risks. Before we unpack all this for you, just a quick reminder, please subscribe, like, and comment below. Helps us out a lot. And hey, if you want us to look into a specific company next time, just leave the name in the comments and we'll check out the sources.
Yeah, this session on Voyager Technologies is, well, it's fascinating. It really forces us to confront that classic high-risk, high-reward situation, doesn't it? We're balancing this potentially explosive growth in space and defense against, frankly, some pretty alarming financial numbers and, a really extreme premium baked into that stock price.
Okay, let's start with the strategy then. Looking at, say, the last 3 months, what specific moves has Voyager made that have, driven the enthusiasm? What's positioning it for what the sources are calling this historic growth? What's the main story here?
Right. The core narrative seems to be transformation. Voyager's shifting, or trying to shift, from just focusing on space infrastructure to becoming a critical tech provider, especially in national security. The biggest recent move the sources highlight was that September 22nd acquisition. That was the proprietary optical communication tech they bought from Bridgecom.
Optical communication. Okay, why is that specific technology a potential game changer? Why isn't it just, another add-on purchase?
Well, because it really speaks directly to that pivot I mentioned. They're not just selling hardware anymore, or that's the goal. This is about moving into secure, high-throughput connectivity. Think super fast, secure data transfer over huge distances. It's the kind of thing the military, intelligence agencies, next-gen satellite companies absolutely need. So the idea is they're trying to own that secure comms layer itself, not just the boxes.
That makes sense. It ties them directly into these big government priorities. But didn't we see the stock dip a bit just before they announced that deal?
We did, yeah. Good catch. Just a few days before, September 19th, shares fell about 2.65%, down to $28.97. That movement, well, it could just be normal market noise, typical volatility, or maybe some anticipation of the costs involved in buying a specialized firm like Bridgecom. Hard to say for sure.
Okay, so this Bridgecom deal is one piece, but their strategy seems like a broader attack on these big sector trends.
Yeah.
What other strategic pillars are mentioned in the sources?
Yeah, it's definitely multi-pronged. We see about 3 main areas. First, there's that continued focus on national security stuff, comms, guidance systems, signals intelligence, the bread and butter. That positions them for those potentially steady, maybe high-margin government and military contracts. That's sort of the foundation. Second, and this is the big one, the really long-term play. Developing the commercial Starlab space station, aiming for like a permanent human presence in orbit. That's a huge, huge bet. Very speculative.
Wow, okay. And you mentioned 3 areas. What's the third? AI.
Exactly. Advancements in AI-enabled space edge computing R&D. This is pretty vital, too. It strengthens their hand in delivering intelligence and operational support right from orbit. That's crucial for both defense and commercial space missions these days. And underpinning all of this, the sources keep mentioning these projections of historic growth for the whole space economy. That's the big picture they're selling.
Right, this aggressive strategy acquiring tech, developing AI for space, planning a space station, it all sounds incredibly expensive. So what does this transformation actually cost them? Let's pivot from the strategy story to the financial reality.
And that's really the essential counterpoint we have to dig into. The company is showing rapid revenue growth, suggesting the strategy might be working on the top line. But yeah, it comes at a very, very high cost.
Okay, let's unpack those hard numbers then. Start with the growth. What are the key revenue figures we should be looking at?
All right, so the trailing 12-month revenue, the TTM, that's the revenue over the last reported year, is about $157.5 million. Shows decent year-over-year growth. But the forecasts, they're extremely ambitious. They're projecting 18.4% growth in 2025, hitting around $171 million. And then it really accelerates, supposedly, up to 64.2% growth in 2027, reaching almost $347 million.
Okay, those top-line numbers, that's what the bulls are excited about, right? That's what analysts hang their hats on. But if revenue is climbing that fast, why are we talking about extreme financial risk? What's happening on the bottom line?
Ah, yes, the bottom line. Well, the company is deeply unprofitable. Net income TTM is negative $104.8 million, and earnings per share, the EPS TTM, is negative $7.92. They are essentially burning through cash to get that top-line growth.
Losing over $100 million a year.
Hmm.
That sounds less like investing and more like, I don't know, a speculative bet on something big happening down the road.
Mm.
How do they keep the lights on? How do they fund these massive projects like Starlab if they're losing that much money? What's their actual financial health like?
Okay, this is where we look at their sort of financial safety net. And interestingly, their liquidity right now looks solid. The current ratio is 2.38. Now, what that means basically is, do they have enough current assets, cash, receivables to cover their current debts, stuff due in the next year? And 2.38 is strong. It suggests they have more than double the assets needed to cover those near-term bills.
Okay, so they aren't facing immediate bankruptcy tomorrow. But that liquidity doesn't fix the core problem, does it? The fact that they're not making any money.
No, absolutely not. It's a buffer, not a solution. Their inability to generate profit means key metrics like return on assets, return on invested capital, they're deeply negative, around minus 20%. But here's the really critical ratio, addressing your point about keeping the lights on. The interest coverage ratio. It's negative 5.85.
Negative 5.85. Explain that in simple terms. Why is that negative number so alarming?
It's alarming because this ratio measures if a company's operating earnings can cover its debt interest payments. A negative number means their actual operations aren't even generating enough cash to pay the interest on the debt they already have. So they have to find money elsewhere, borrow more, issue more stock just to pay the interest bill. The critical takeaway for you, the listener, is that this high-growth tech company is relying heavily on the capital markets. And it's not projected to actually make a profit, to have positive EPS until at least 2027, maybe later.
Wow. Okay, so given that heavy reliance on outside money, let's look ahead. What's coming up in the next, say, 3 months? What specific dates or events could really move this stock, besides just general space sector news?
Yeah, what's interesting here is how many potential catalysts are clustered in the next quarter. First up, Q3 2025 earnings release that's scheduled for October 14th. The market's going to be watching that like a hawk, specifically looking for early signs on that Bridgecom integration. Are they getting any early wins? Or is it just adding more cost right now?
Makes sense. And outside of their own results, what about just market mechanics? Could they influence things?
Definitely. We have to watch the institutional activity. 2 key dates could cause some volatility. There's the institutional ownership filing deadline on October 25th that tells us if the big funds are buying or selling shares. And then the major ETF rebalancing effective date on November 1st. If Voyager gets included or gets a bigger weighting in some key growth or space-focused ETFs, that could force buying, push the price up, regardless of the fundamentals at that moment.
Right, the technical flows. Okay, beyond those scheduled things, what about the rumor mill? What are the whispers that keep the momentum traders interested?
Oh, the rumor mill is very active here. And the rumors all tie back to validating that big, expensive strategy. Rumor 1. Speculation about a new partnership or a contract, maybe with a major NATO government, something extending their national security footprint. That would be huge validation for the Bridgecom deal.
Okay, and what about the Bridgecom tech itself? Any rumors about showing it off? Proving it works commercially?
Yep, that's rumor 2. There's anticipation of a live demonstration, maybe before the end of the year, specifically for commercial satellite operators. If they can show it works well outside of just defense, that could ease a lot of investor nerves about the cash burn and the debt.
And lastly, that elephant in the room, Starlab, that giant capital-hungry project. They can't fund that on negative earnings alone.
Exactly right. So rumor 3 is all about some kind of imminent, maybe massive investment round, or perhaps a public-private partnership to really accelerate Starlab's deployment and get it ready for business. All of these are, potentially game-changing events, but, and it's a big but, they are entirely speculative right now, just rumors.
Which brings us to maybe the most important question of all. Given this mix, high potential, deep losses, massive execution risk, how is the stock actually priced right now? That valuation must be baking in almost perfect success, right?
It suggests an absolutely enormous premium expectation. Yes, we really need to look at the price to sales multiple here, the PS ratio. That basically tells us how much the market's willing to pay for each dollar of the company's revenue.
Okay, give us the numbers. How high is it? How does it highlight that premium?
Well, the stock is trading at a PS multiple of 18.56. Now, compare that to established players in aerospace and defense. They typically trade at a PS of, say, 2x to 4x. So the market is currently paying $18.56 for every dollar of Voyager sales. That implies investors think VOYG is going to achieve revenues comparable to like 5 to 9 traditional defense companies combined soon. It's aggressive.
18.56. That's an immense burden of proof. How do the quantitative models, the algorithms, view that kind of difference?
Well, one quant rating we looked at assigns the stock a very high uncertainty rating, and it estimates that Voyager trades at a, frankly, staggering 779% premium to its estimated fair value. The model puts fair value around $23.22. So the math basically suggests the current price, around $30, is just wildly disconnected from the present value of its assets and its current cash flows.
Hold on. A 779% premium warning. Deep unprofitability. How can the analysts just ignore that? What are they seeing that these backward-looking quant models are missing?
And that divergence, that's where the real tension in the market is, right? The analyst consensus is surprisingly bullish. We have 7 analysts rating it a buy. Their average 12-month price target is $47.71. That's a pretty significant upside from where it's been trading recently, in that $29, $32 range. So the analysts, they're focusing almost entirely on the future story. The market size, that strategic bridge come by, the potential for high-margin government contracts, the hope for Starlab success. They're basically looking way past 2027 and betting on rapid, successful execution that eventually justifies today's high price.
So analysts are selling the dream while the quant models are flashing bright red about the current price.
Okay,
Let's try to summarize the key risks then. Because the stock's volatility has been severe, it fell from a 52-week high near $74.
Yeah, the primary risks seem pretty clear from the sources. First, obviously, the persistent cash burn. Ongoing negative EPS. No clear profit path projected before 2027. That means they constantly need to raise more money successfully. Second, that high valuation premium. It leaves basically zero room for error. If they stumble on execution, if contracts slip, if acquisitions don't integrate well, or even if those ambitious 2027 growth forecasts slow down just a bit, the stock is incredibly vulnerable to a sharp drop. And third, competition. Let's not forget, they're up against huge established giants in aerospace and defense, and right now the sources don't identify a clear, durable competitive advantage and economic moat to protect their tech long term. So if we tie all this analysis back to that core question, is it a buy now? The rationale in our source material comes down to about a 4 out of 10 rating. The positives, that strong strategic revenue growth pipeline they're building, and their current liquidity is robust. They have cash for now.
Okay, a 4 out of 10. And the overwhelming negatives driving that low score.
Well, it's that deep unprofitability, the extremely high valuation premium we talked about, and just very high overall business uncertainty. This stock, based on the sources, really seems suitable for only 2 types of investors right now. 1, aggressive momentum traders playing short-term spikes on news and rumors. Or 2, long-term investors who have an extremely high tolerance for risk and just an ironclad belief that Voyager's disruptive potential will somehow overcome all these hurdles and the entrenched competition.
So Voyager Technologies seems like a pure play on future potential, fueled by speculative acquisitions and big sector trends rather than any kind of current financial stability.
Well, thank you for walking us through this complex picture of Voyager Technologies.
Absolutely. And maybe we can leave you, the listener, with this provocative thought to chew on. Given that high valuation premium, that staggering 779%, the quant model mentioned how many of those speculative rumors we discussed actually need to come true. Think about it. The NATO contract, the successful Starlab fundraising. How many of those need to happen in just the next 12 months for the stock to even justify the low end of the current analyst price targets? Consider the huge execution risk already baked into that massive premium.
That's a great point to ponder. We hope this summary helps you approach your next investment decision with a bit more clarity, understanding both the potential upside and the very real pitfalls.